Hey, welcome into DomTime. An issue coming our way in November. The governor's race doesn't have a lot of traction, let's be honest, with Governor Christie versus Barbara Buono. But an issue that you'll have a chance to vote on in New Jersey, and this has ripple effect with other states. One of our guests tonight has talked about just in January 2012, a number of states raised their minimum wage. New Jersey, we're talking about raising it to $8.25 an hour, and then progressing from that based upon inflation. Joining us are Gordon McGinnis, President, New Jersey Public Policy Perspectives, and Michael Saltzman, Research Director, Employment Policies Institute. Both guys have policies in their title. That means they must be correct. So, Gordon, you heard what Michael said, and he said it to me on the radio today, too. All right, take the burden off the employer. Let's have the earned income tax credit for people as a way of dealing with this low income and helping them out versus people who may be in a different strata. Some of these are kids, middle class, that are making this money, and now we're putting the burden on the employer. What's wrong with that?
Well, first of all, a lot of people who work for minimum wage would not be covered by the earned income tax credit.
Okay.
Because they don't work full time, they don't have families, single individuals, I don't think are eligible for EITC. So you have a big gap there, and by the way, about a quarter of people who work for the minimum wage in New Jersey and would be affected by the increase are parents. And so perhaps most of them would be affected by the earned income tax credit. But even if you put that together with what you earn for the minimum wage, you are still below the survival level.
Now, something you wrote that I want to get into, I want to challenge your statistics on where you get this from, that you talk about the number of workers in New Jersey. I think 76% voters in New Jersey support raising the minimum wage, but the small business majority, you say 67% of small business owners do.
Did I say that?
Yeah, it's in your background information that was sent to me. Okay. A report was out. I find that to be counterintuitive, that small business people are going to
Well, first of all, I think there's a myth about the minimum wage being primarily one that affects small businesses, when in fact, nationally, if you look at what corporations employ people at the minimum wage, they are big corporations, fast food.
So that's actually not true, and I just need to correct the record on that point. And I've heard you make that point before about 2/3 being employed by large corporations. The group that did that report actually found that it was 2/3 that worked at businesses with 100 or more employees. Now, if you're a small grocery store operator that's got 2 locations, you're at 100 or more employees, and you're looking at a 1% to 2% profit margin. So these are not large corporations. Even if you're a business with 100 employees, you're a small restaurant franchisee.
So even if you are a franchisee of fast food restaurants and you own 10, you are.
Well, that would be more like 5.
Well, I mean, there are 20
employees
employees in a fast food restaurant. I doubt that if they're open and using.
For viewers, what's the difference? If it's a big corporate type of thing, there's more onus here.
I'm just saying that the idea that this is going to affect primarily small business operators who have got 7 people in the neighborhood working, I don't think is the case. And so what we're talking about is. And back to the earned income tax credit. Yes, if you have 2 people in a household working above the minimum wage, but say under, one's working for $10 an hour and one's working for $9 an hour, they might be eligible for the earned income tax credit. And when it comes, they're still going to be living at a level that none of us would want to live at. They're still going to be struggling. They're not going to have savings.
Are we sending a bad message to people, though, telling them that this is going to be some kind of living wage? It's not. That's not what the minimum wage is referred to.
Somebody may call it a living wage. We don't call it a living wage. It is not close to a living wage. I mean,
what should it be in your world? Let me ask you. Give me a figure of what you think. Is 825 too low in Jersey? I just want to probe you a little bit.
So I'm not advocating the minimum wage as a living wage. I'm advocating to increase the minimum wage to put a floor on the earnings of people who go to work every day, work full time. Most of them work full time, and many of them are in households with kids. And the idea that you can survive in this region.
But if they were a good employee, isn't the worker moving them up? Isn't the employer moving them up? Aren't they paying them more if they're a good worker?
Well, yes, that's true. And people take jobs at minimum wage and move on. This is a robust economy with a lot of moving parts.
Well, and that's the key too. Is that most when you talk about people who start at the minimum wage, the research shows that the vast majority of people who start there earn a raise in their first 1 to 12 months on the job. But you can't get the raise without experience, and you can't get the experience if you don't have a job in the first place. And that's why this question about the research is so important. You know, he mentioned earlier that there are economists on both sides, but here's the thing is, the important thing about the research on the minimum wage is that 85% of the most credible studies on the minimum wage from the last 2 decades show that job loss occurs after you increase it. Now, in a state with a 27% unemployment rate among young adults, it's just not wise, and it's not good policy to pursue this, and especially for the Constitution.
Excuse me, you interrupted me. Let me interrupt you just to say that the academic studies end up with, first of all, there is no strong, credible evidence that minimum wage increases lead to a loss in jobs. In fact, if
I've actually got a picture right here of, you know, we put out the studies up of the ones that show job loss and then the ones that don't.
Yeah.
Just to kind of give an example of how big the consensus is on this particular issue.
Let's look
it's overwhelming.
Let's look at the most frequently referenced research on this that took place in New Jersey when the minimum wage was increased. They looked at the fast food industry, which is a place that employs a lot of minimum wage workers. They took an area with about the same size, same economy across the river in Pennsylvania, where there was no increase in the minimum wage. And the study found that there was an increase in employment in New Jersey, no increase in Pennsylvania, and no reduction in the profit.
Okay, coming up here, I'll intervene here in these doing academic studies, and I want to have you call in. Does it make sense to you when you go to the ballot, if you're in New Jersey particularly, when you go in November, would you vote? Do you think this makes sense, 825 and then indexed to inflation? We'll talk with both of our guests next and you on DomTime.